You're listening to episode 28 of the On Being Human podcast.
Welcome to the On Being Human podcast, where we believe transforming ourselves can positively transform society. Your host, Brandy Fleck, has the honor of exploring the human condition with real people who bravely share their personal stories of adversity, healing, joy, and more. If you're seeking empowerment, strength, and inspiration, listen in to engage and explore tough topics that help us humanize one another, understand ourselves better, spread love, and connect.
Welcome back to another soul-exposing exploration of what it means to be human. Last week, we talked to an early childhood educator about the impact of years 0 through 5 on the rest of our lives. It was pretty mind-blowing, so go check that out at onbeinghuman.podcast.com/episodes/027. This week, we're hearing from Donna Campbell, a Nashville native activist and environmental advocate who is really an advocate for humanity. By day, she works in a corporate legal department here in the Nashville area. She heads up a diversity and inclusion initiative at work, and in her spare time, Donna volunteers for the Citizens Climate Lobby, spends time composting and making environmental changes at home, and practices yoga. There are so many great takeaways in this episode, but if you listen for nothing else, the most important thing about this episode is the example Donna sets for how to harness hard, painful experiences as motivation to follow a positive life path. When traumatic and painful events occur, we can choose to rise up. And here's one of the gems. You can feel safe again. After tragedy strikes, it is possible to eventually feel safe again. Remember that. So today, Donna details her journey from childhood to now, telling us about the major hardships that made her the person she is today. We discuss everything from caretaking for family members to losing loved ones and working through it. And then Donna goes on to explain how caring for the environment is connected to loving humanity and the diversity of the human condition. Plus, Donna tells us how to start advocating for causes that we believe in. Her passion just comes right through and is really contagious. I really enjoyed it. So stay tuned for more gems that come out in this conversation. To support our efforts, you can now go to onbeinghumanpodcast.com/shop and click the Amazon banner there to do your regular shopping. At no additional charge to you, a portion of all your purchases made through that click will go directly to the production of this podcast. How easy is that? Same Amazon, same experience, same shopping you'd do anyways. Best of all, same prices, but you're supporting the On Being Human podcast. Again, shop Amazon at no additional cost to you at onbeinghumanpodcast.com/shop. As always, subscribe on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, leave a rating, leave a review, and you can find the show's presence on Facebook and Pinterest for now. Without further ado, let's hear from Donna. Hi, Donna. Welcome to the show today. I am so excited to have you here because you are just an awesome example of someone who takes action for the things you believe in. I feel like you are constantly learning and looking for ways to make a difference, so I just can't wait to jump in.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Brandy. I really appreciate you asking me to participate.
That's awesome. So let's start with, this is a big one, but who are you as a person and what in life has made you who you are today?
It is a really big one, and I looked at this question beforehand, and, there's a couple of them that I thought, wow, this is really hard to explain, but really, I would say that my life drastically changed 10 years ago. It was the start of a series of fairly traumatic events that happened to me that made me start to want to explore myself and how I lived my life and thought my thoughts and all of those types of things. So in January 2009, my mother passed away, and my parents were still married at the time, and they had been married for like 54 years. So it was really tough on my dad. And unbeknownst to the rest of the family, my dad actually had dementia, and my mom had been covering for him, for a number of years. And when she passed, it got extremely accelerated, I guess, and he went into a form of dementia called delirium, where he didn't really even know where he was. He was seeing people walk through walls. So we had all that going on, and then that was a struggle. It really changed my relationship with him. It was really, really hard to be a caregiver for someone with that disease. He didn't want to believe that he had anything wrong with him. He did come out of delirium and he got a little bit better, but he ended up, ultimately, he committed suicide in 2011.
Oh.
And that was really hard. And that's something that, you'll definitely, if you've been a caretaker for a person that has that disease, you questioned all of the things that you did and how you tried to help them manage and how that all worked out. And so after that happened, it was still pretty rocky, I guess, for quite a while. And then I lost my son to alcoholism in 2013. So that happened in November. And wow, I was just sort of paralyzed for a really, I don't know, a long period of time, actually. Depressed and really sad. And my favorite friend was from a vineyard, and so I struggled to get through that period. And even though I'm a fairly positive and optimistic person, just there have been so many things that I just wasn't able to really process or get past any of that stuff. So I was kind of stuck for a really long time in that spot. And then, just strangely enough, I got the flu. And that sounds like a really weird pivot point, but it really was a very pivotal thing that happened to me. Someone at work had the flu. They had gotten it from somebody else from Australia or something. But anyway, it was pretty serious. So I was sick for about a week, and it was respiratory. So I was hacking, coughing, all this stuff. This was like in August, maybe 2015. And so I had coughed so much, I really thought I had cracked a rib or something. I just had a lot of pain in my back. And so maybe 6 or 8 weeks later, I thought, oh my God, I just have to try something. So I decided to try yoga to help me with my back. And that just sort of led to all sorts of other things. So the yoga did help my back.
Okay.
But more importantly, the yoga started to help my head and help me start to process sort of what I was feeling. It led to meditation, which definitely introspective. I started, trying to learn a little bit more about emotional intelligence, just kind of, trying to figure out what all had happened. I also did some other things. I went to psychics. I did all kinds of things, just trying to, I went to a therapist. I did all kinds of things trying to find my path back out. At one point I wasn't really sure I wanted to find my path back out. I really was so depressed, but thankfully I got past that. And that's one of the things that, is really important to understand with depression for people that are really, really sad, is that, things do constantly change and they don't always get worse. Sometimes they do get better. And so, just kind of being able to keep forging through. But that was really the last 10 years, that journey, starting with that one tragic moment that really changed everything for me
Mm-hmm.
with my mom passing, and then kind of coming all the way through all of that darkness. And, now I'm in a really, really good place. I'm still definitely practicing yoga. I'm practicing meditation. I'm still getting better. I'm still, trying to learn how to be a less judgmental, more open, more engaged, active listening person. But all of that together kind of just brought me to this one particular place.
Gotcha. Well, that is a lot. Donna, I had no idea, and I'm really sorry to hear about all that. And I've had, I guess, similar experiences with compounded grief, but I can't imagine. That just seems like a lot of compounded grief that took a long time to probably work through. I know you said you're still going to yoga and things like that and meditating. Are you still processing and working through some of these things?
I think you continue to your whole life, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because grief is such a complex process, and to have it happen with three people. Now, I didn't have as much to process on my mom, just like, just sadness really that she was gone. But the situations with my father and with my son, because those were those health issues that they had, the Alzheimer's and the addiction issues, were relationship related issues, right? I mean, how we can relate to people that are like that. How do we make them feel? How do we support them
Mm-hmm.
in a way that they can accept the support? Are we just adding to their burden when we're communicating with them, and all that stuff? So when you have those two relationships were a lot harder to process, because you have regret. And so you have to really within yourself learn that, the could have beens, you just don't need to go there, because whatever could have been, you could have made it worse. You don't always know that you could have made it better. So just trying to speculate and forecast for the past, what might have happened if you had only done this or that. I mean, that's really a hard thing to prevent yourself from doing. You have to get to the point where you're not doing that any longer. Like, you cannot change what has happened. And so part of being able to process that for me has been, okay, well, let me think about some of the things that I don't like about how I did interact with them, whether it has to do with the outcome and what happened or not. I'm not trying to put a bunch of blame on myself, but what can I do to improve my relationships with people where I don't have to question, was that the right thing to say to that person, or was I being too judgmental of that person, or whatever. So that part of the relationship struggle really did lead to the emotional intelligence part and wanting to study that. And really, I'm not somebody that innately has emotional intelligence. There are people that do, but it can be learned. And that's also something I'm still practicing. I'm no expert, but I continue to want to be conscious of it, and how I interact with people, and how I make other people feel, and how I may be being perceived by other people.
Gotcha. Well, how do you feel about your life today?
I feel really good, Brandy. I feel really healthy. I mean, yoga is an awesome practice. And so physically, I'm so much healthier and stronger. And it just leads to so many other things. I mean, it leads you to be a little more aware about your food and
Mm-hmm.
how you're breathing, and all of those things. And I'm also at this point in my life less worried about what other people think. And that's a really freeing feeling, really. So I can feel many things and not feel really guilty about them. Just granting
Sure.
yourself permission to be happy or sad or angry and just letting those kinds of feelings come up without, judging them. Oh, that's bad that I feel angry. No, sometimes it's actually good that you feel angry. So, being less judgmental about myself and being more self accepting, I think that's probably one of the best things about my life today.
Awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. Can you tell us a little bit about what your life was like growing up?
This was my second really hard question.
Okay.
So it was good and it was bad. I mean, it was happy and it was tragic. I mean, there was stuff that happened. So I am from Middle Tennessee, and my grandparents on my father's side were farmers in Williamson County. And so I spent my childhood, in the tobacco fields, running through fields with grasshoppers and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I mean, really fun. And we also lived in Williamson County until I was about 6, and then moved into Nashville. So when I moved into Nashville, I was kind of behind education wise. It was first grade. Everybody could read. I couldn't read. So that was kind of a struggle, but it was fine. All those years were fine. But teen years got to be a little bit more challenging.
Uh-huh.
I had an interaction with someone that I knew that it was an attempted rape, and I was not raped, but it was super traumatic,
Sure.
and it was someone within my family. And then I felt after that, I really did not feel like my family protected me from this person adequately. And so I really developed this really resilient facade, I guess I would want to call it. But I just did whatever I wanted to. Like, I didn't even ask. I went and got a job. I had my own money. I just kind of went on my own path. Basically, at that point in time, just doing whatever I wanted to do, just because I felt like there was no one that was as concerned about me as I was.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting, and it is interesting in the fact that I don't feel like my parents were bad people at all. I feel like they were good people. I just feel like they also didn't maybe have a lot of emotional intelligence, or I really understand kind of how something can actually impact another person, and the fact that the event is over doesn't mean that the residual effects of the event is over. So it's hard to be a parent,
Mm-hmm.
and I do know that. And so that's also been kind of an interesting thing. When both your parents are gone, you do start to think about how difficult some of the choices were that they had to make when they were raising, more than one kid, or, just getting by, or, how that all works out for families. But I don't really have any family left that I associate with anymore. So I've grown up, and I've just grown past and grown out of all of that. So my friends are now my family, and my in my life, I guess probably starting at about 15, that was the case. Friends became more of the family than my actual blood family. So I've spent a lot of vacations with my friends' families, and I was always doing things with my friends, and I just tried to stay kind of out and about as much as I could.
Gotcha. Well, that's a lot.
It is. I'm just going to tell you, like, I'm an expert at compartmentalizing. So I feel like that's been probably my best survival strategy. I mean, at some point, you have to break all that stuff open, you know?
Yeah.
But when you're going through really traumatic moments, it kind of helps you to kind of, keep it. It helps me. I can't speak for other people, but it helped me to kind of keep it just a little bit tight and just always be able to think, I'm going to get through this and this is not going to beat me. And, at some point later, when you feel safe, you let your guard down and all that stuff comes out. And, it's definitely huge. But being able to kind of carry on and move forward despite the circumstances
Mm-hmm.
it's probably one of my best strengths.
Gotcha. Well, I think an interesting point that you mentioned there too is that eventually you do feel safe. Like there are, I mean, in a lot of circumstances, I think, like at least my own experience, and now I'm hearing yours, is that it's possible to feel safe. So I just want anybody listening who might be going through something to think about that.
Yeah, exactly. And think very clearly and thoughtfully about what is it going to take to make you feel safe. I mean, I feel like that is one of the keys to one of the platforms, at least, to being happy, is just knowing that you are physically and mentally and emotionally in a safe place.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing all that. I would like to pivot just a little bit into, and you touched on a little bit of your inspiration for making changes in your own lifestyle in the last 10 years, but what is the exact inspiration that prompted you to want to help society and the planet?
I love an underdog, I guess. I've sort of felt like one a lot of my life.
Uh-huh.
And so I do really love an underdog. So that's part of it. I'm drawn to the house that needs to be fixed up. I'm just sort of drawn to those things. So the society changes, all of this is so interconnected. So at our company, or the company where I work, we started a diversity and inclusion program. It's a global company, and that is really important. We have a diverse employee base in our building. And so that was kind of interesting to me. And I started just getting involved a little bit just because my boss was the chair and started doing things. But then it just started to really gain momentum about how interconnected all of these things are, whether it is, how we're relating to each other at work or outside of work, with our environment, all of that together. How does industry impact diversity and inclusion and just all of those things? So it's just a big wadded up ball of mess, quite frankly. uh, it is, but it's super interesting. So the diversity inclusion piece was really still part of my personal journey to learn how to be less biased and less judgmental, more self-aware, more open and loving and caring towards other people, trying to gain an understanding of their cultures. I love to travel, so I definitely appreciate the beauty of culture,
Mm-hmm.
of other cultures, but just trying to really understand, not just, oh, this is beautiful, but like, what does it mean? How does this impact the society? What's the history around this? And why is this important to this particular person or this group of people? Then at some point, I noticed that there was a whole bunch of trash at the end of my street. And this sounds like a really strange pivot for sure. But I went down and I picked up all that trash. And I started really just thinking about the planet in general and how, it's all of us, right? That's probably one of our biggest diversity issues is that we have people from all over the globe. We all need to sustain the earth so that we can live on it in an equitable and, you know, I don't know, happy way, really.
Yeah.
And we can't keep going like we're going. So diversity and inclusion and the environment are all definitely tied together. And we all do breathe the same air, so that's part of it. And then that leads to questions about how society plays a role in oppression, and corporations play a role in the environmental impacts. And so that's why I say it's like a big wadded up ball of stuff, but it's also interconnected. And so one thing is sort of led to another that led to another that led to another. I'm just doing what I can as a person to minimize my impact on the environment, whether that's going down to the end of the street and picking up trash, or if that's educating people at my work about ways that they can improve the way that they live to also create less impact on the environment. Anyway, so that's just kind of my thought. It's just kind of things are always sort of morphing along. They're always changing and, pivoting to a new focus, but it's all related.
Sure. I really love how you spelled out for us how diversity and inclusion is connected to the environment and how there's an impact and how it's all connected. So I love that. Thank you. So now I want to ask you, how did you start to make changes once you realized you needed to in terms of impact on the environment?
Yeah, for the environment, I think I started just so little. I mean, it's not that we're totally unaware of what's going on. I think that we are, but we're addicted to convenience, right, in our society, because we just feel this need to just do, and do all these things. And so one of the first things that we did was we got a different paper towel dispenser. And that sounds funny, but it had a little tension mechanism in it, so it would allow you with one hand to just yank off one little small part of a paper towel. So that was awesome. I like that. And I thought, well, I could even use less paper towels if we just use cloth napkins. I've got a ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why not we just use those for every day? So we started using cloth napkins for every day, and we started, wiping our hands using a clean dish towel. And, obviously, if you've been cleaning chicken or something, you don't want to do that. But if you have clean hands and you just need to dry your hands, there's just a towel. So we cut down maybe on the paper towel use to probably half at least or less.
Mm-hmm.
I recycle a lot. I've been doing that for a really long time, and I recycle everything. I recycle glass and plastics. I've got 2 different recycle bins. That was one thing. Then next, I guess we started a compost. So built a compost outside and started composting the kitchen compost and, reusing what we can, use the coffee grounds, what have you. And then just recently we added a compost service to our little arsenal of all the things that we're doing, called Compost Nashville, and they come once a week and pick up a 4-gallon container that, I can put things in there that I cannot put in my home compost. So I can put in meat or seafood or cheese or oily things that you don't want to put in your home compost because it'll get rancid and gross. But they have a way of being able to process that. So our trash is down to about, I don't know, it's hardly any hardly any trash going out for the trash bin. So they're just little tiny steps I think that people can take when we start thinking about what we need to do for the environment. Oh my God, there are so many things that we need to do, but just by deciding to do one thing, you you create an impact, right? And so by deciding to do that thing, and then after you've done that thing, well, just add another thing. And then all of a sudden, you're just really making a serious impact. I've had one plastic water bottle since January 1st,
Ooh.
only because someone was helping me with a project and gave me one, and I felt bad, so I took it. But next time I'm going to refuse. Next time I'm just going to say, no, thank you. I really am just trying not to drink out of those. But yeah, so there's just think about that. That's 5 months with no bottled water. That's significant if you think about all those bottles that could have been. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And also, can we touch on emotional intelligence a little bit and sort of societal oppression? Those are two huge things, but can you just briefly summarize some of the things that you've changed to be more aware and help those areas?
Yeah, so being emotionally intelligent is, in my mind, this is just Donna's definition. This is
Sure.
probably not Daniel Goleman's definition, but it's learning to be more objective and also recognizing when you're not being objective, right? So let's just say I'm walking down the street and I see someone who appears to be homeless, walking on the other side of the street from me. Maybe they're coming towards me, and I've had an experience with the homeless person before, right? And my immediate reaction is to become afraid, or just to start judging that person, about that person must be nasty, or that person must be mentally ill, or that person must be this, or that person must be that, without knowing anything about that person. And so emotional intelligence is recognizing when your brain takes you down that automatic path. And just by becoming aware that you're going there, that you've had that judgment, it calls up a question, right? Like, oh, why did I think that? And so being able to stop and pause your brain actually from going down those automated thought pathways is emotional intelligence. And it's a scientific thing, really. Your brain actually does create those sort of message paths. It's the quickest way to get to somewhere, and it will automatically take you there, but you can interrupt that. But you have to start thinking, if you think, oh, well, why does she look like that? Well, why did you think she looked like something?
Sure.
So, whatever that is, when we're having judgments about people, I think that's the most important aspect of emotional intelligence, is really self-awareness, right?
Gotcha. This is such good stuff. This is awesome.
Well, I'm glad it really is. I mean, it's fascinating. There's a lot of it sounds a little hoodoo-ish or what have you, but
Yeah.
But there's science. There's real science behind a lot of these things that people don't really understand. So there are a lot of mysteries in the world. I mean, why not? Right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Now, so for other people who might want to start helping society or the planet but don't know where to start, what are your tips for those people?
Yeah, I think if you want to start to help the planet, I feel like our first stop is always ourselves, right? And so just kind of looking at how you're living, and trying to make changes that make sense. Every Everything doesn't make sense for everybody, and I understand that. So, and this kind of goes back to the meditation and the yoga thought process, is that practicing yoga and meditation is a way to also take a little bit of pressure off yourself from trying to be perfect about something. So I don't really feel like I have to be perfect. Every little tiny thing that I do, or every little tiny thing that anybody does, it's a step towards progress, right? So whether you're hanging your clothes outside to dry instead of using a dryer, or you're composting, you're not composting, you're definitely recycling, hopefully. All those things, that's the start. But then if you can get outside of your own personal space and start to share what you're doing with other people, and get people talking about it, talking about using less plastic, talking about not just recycling plastic, but rejecting plastic. I think that one of the biggest weapons that individuals have in their arsenal, definitely banded together, we have it, is that consumers have power, right? Consumers have created the mess that we're in, really,
Mm-hmm.
but consumer has the power to also reverse a lot of what's been done. So if we change our spending habits and our buying habits, what we're buying, manufacturers, producers, they have to change what they're giving us, right? So if you decide, I'm only going to buy my yogurt if it's in a glass container, I'm not going to buy it if it's in plastic, then at some point, there's not going to be just one yogurt vendor putting their yogurt in a glass container. There's going to be 10, right? So those little things are good. And then getting together with other people, that are like-minded. So whether there's a ton of different organizations out there, and you can't participate in everything, right? So you just have to pick. For myself, I am involved with an outside organization called the Citizens Climate Lobby,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a grassroots organization that's really it's all over the world, and they are very interested in reducing carbon, and are supporting a really aggressive plan that is currently in legislation for, let's see, I think it was just reintroduced this session, that will, it's called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Act. And it is a really detailed plan about how we can incentivize reducing our carbon outputs, and also not do that on the backs of the people that can least afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how familiar you are with the yellow vest activity that's been going on in France, but that's similar to a carbon fee, in that they placed a carbon fee. It came down to consumers as a gas tax, and the consumers are outraged over that.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular bill is a bill that would place a fee of $15 a ton on carbon at the production level. And yes, it we know those costs are going to get passed on to the consumers. So what happens with that $15 is that it is collected by the Internal Revenue Service, who will retain like a 3% fee for administration of the funds, and then the rest of the funds are fully returned to American consumers. So, and a monthly dividend check. So that way, if you're the guy that makes $27,000 a year, you're getting the same check as the guy that, makes $100,000 a year. You're not, it's so all of the burden of making these changes are not going to be just on the backs of the consumers. It's going to be spread out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be really interesting to follow.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. And some of this stuff just makes so much sense. You wonder why people aren't doing it. I mean, the fact that we're just so frightened about losing the coal industry, the oil industry, when there are so many green industries out there that we could pivot to and change if we would just be thoughtful and try to figure out, a long-term program. And so that's kind of what the Energy Innovation Act does. It's supposed to create over 2 million jobs and seriously reduce the amount of carbon that's going into the air by, I think, 2040. So it's has huge impacts, and we need something at this point. We can't keep talking about it. We need to do something really, really impactful now.
Yes, yes. And that is a perfect segue into something you said about having conversations with people. Really sparked a question. So I know that a lot of people in our society value action, and they think action is the most important thing. But I also think that conversation and talking about it has its place. So, can you tell me your thoughts a little bit on just the importance of starting the conversation and talking to like-minded people, and how does that lead to action?
Yeah, so funny because we have a hard time in this country having a conversation, right? If somebody has a different viewpoint from ours, it can get really contentious really fast,
Sure.
There's so much name calling and crazy stuff about any sort of issue that has any import, really. Seems like people just want to have animosity going. So I think one of the best things that I actually learned when I went to my very first Citizens Climate Lobby meeting, we had a speaker, and I unfortunately can't recall her name right now, but she's a journalist, and she was talking about how do you respond to people that maybe have a differing opinion than you. And as a part of my volunteer duties, I may be out in a park, tabling an event, and I may have somebody come up and say, I don't believe in climate change, whatever it is, just trying to kind of poke the bear a little bit, or, maybe. I think some people just do that for fun, but then some people do it for real because they're just passionate and they have a different opinion. So her suggestion when you have that happen is just to genuinely tell the person, look, tell me more about what you think. Like, tell me more about why you feel that way. And being able to do that, as opposed to going into some sort of mode where you want to force your opinion on another person, is just really, it changes the whole dynamic of the conversation, because the other person is probably not expecting you to do that, right?
Sure.
And then the second thing that happens, I think, is that person automatically thinks, okay, I am going to be heard. And people want to be heard. They don't want to just be talked to. So I think that's probably the first step, is to let people that are maybe a little bit opposite you, let them know that you're not trying to just ram something down their throat. You want to have a conversation, not just a lecture.
Mhm.
So that's kind of that's one of the very first steps I think that we need to take.
Well, that's really awesome. Thank you. I will definitely put that in the takeaways in the show notes, so you guys make sure to check those out. And then I want to ask you a little bit about the topic of analysis paralysis, where there are so many different areas for improvement and so many issues in our society and with our environment. If someone doesn't even know where to start, how do you recommend they start, or figuring out how to start?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite sayings really is it's an answer to a question really is how do you eat a bear, right? Because a bear's really huge, and you eat a bear one bite at a time, and so that's kind of a funny little thing that's just stuck in my head for a really long time. But you've got this big, gnarly, sort of scary, whatever thing, bear,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, and you can't really. I don't even look at the whole big thing. When you're trying to figure out what can you do, maybe you assess the whole picture, but then you have to step back and think, okay, I'm going to pick off some low hanging fruit. What are they? And that's where you start, because picking off the low hanging fruit leads to success really fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just get that bump of, oh my God, I already did this. It's like the paper towels. Okay. Oh my God, we've already reduced our paper towels by half. Yay, let's do something else. So that's kind of how that works. It incentivizes you to go forward because you just had a win. So, oh, I won that. I'm going to go do this. And so that's probably continuous improvement, I guess is what you would call it in business. Being able to start, just go ahead and start. It doesn't matter where you start, but you have to start. And once you do that and you have one tiny little success, you've overcome one hurdle, one bump, then you're incentivized to keep going. And then you take the next step. And then before you know it, you've gone a really long way. So that's kind of my mode of operating my whole life, really. At work and at home is just like doing little bitty tiny things that when I add those things up together, they become significant.
Gotcha. That is really great. So, Donna, earlier you mentioned a little bit about leading a diversity and inclusion effort at your workplace. I'd love to hear, what is the most important thing you've learned from doing that program?
Wow, that people are beautiful.
Oh,
So, really, I mean, that's like the most fun thing about putting on a D&I program at a place like where I work, where we have people from China, people from India, people from Russia. We have Black Americans. We have men, women, we have everything. It's not equally distributed, but the joy that people have when you invite them to share their culture, when they love it. They just really, really love it. And it's so beautiful to watch. So I think it's life changing. It's life changing for them. I think they get a level of acceptance that they don't normally um, receive or perceive. If you think about, let's say you are someone from India working in Nashville, Tennessee, then you're away from your family, right? Your family is 17, 18 hours away on a plane.
mhm.
Time zone difference crazy. You don't get to talk to them very much, so they're over here kind of isolated. And then if they also feel isolated in their workplace, like their culture's not appreciated, like they're maybe, they're not as respected as other citizens or employees, that would be really challenging and hard. So I think that sometimes it just takes someone just making a tiny effort forward, but I've just seen so many beautiful things happen in my workplace because of our D&I efforts that never would have happened before. So it's really that's my favorite thing about the whole deal.
Awesome. And then, what do you have to say about the thought that just one person can't make a difference or that little things don't matter?
Ooh, I think little things matter. I think little things matter a lot. And I think throughout history, you see that one person can make a difference, right? I mean, you can just look back, whether you're looking back at women's history or Black American history or Native American history. Definitely one person can make an impact. And sometimes those impacts aren't good. We can look back in history and find those as well. But definitely one person can do serious good or serious damage. So I think people do have power. And we all need to recognize that the person that you see in the history book, they're probably no different than you, really. They just, their situation, their timing, what they were interested in, their passion was maybe different, but everyone is just as capable to have an impact in an area if they really feel passionate about it in some way.
Gotcha. I really love how you pointed out that there are concrete examples in history that prove that little things matter. Definitely, I think sometimes we lose sight of we can look back to what other people did in our society that made it what it is today, and that we can be like that too. There's no reason why we can't.
Yeah. Yeah, you just never know. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, look at the little Greta Thunberg girl. She's 16 years old. She's changing the world, quite frankly. Going around speaking about the environment. I believe she has Asperger's. I'm not really sure, but she has a mental condition that is challenging for her, but yet she carried on. She was brave. She felt very, very strongly about the environment and what she needed to do, and she gave herself a voice, right? And
Mm-hmm.
nobody gave it to her. She gave it to herself, and I feel like she's just an inspiring young woman to every other young woman and young man out there now.
I agree. She's doing some really awesome stuff. And last but not least, what does being human mean to you?
It really means just constantly changing. I think that is my life. I just constantly looking for ways to evolve. I think we're all struggle, like, what is our purpose? And your purpose is to enjoy your life, but finding the thing that fulfills you, and working that path, whatever that path is. I mean, and contributing to your society. That would be what it means to me.
I really love it. Donna, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Brandy, I was delighted. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You guys, isn't Donna just so awesome? She is such an amazing example of introspection, resilience, and harnessing her life experiences to make a positive impact. For all the cool stuff that she mentions, go to onbeinghuman.podcast.com/episodes/028. Be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts so others like yourselves can find the show, and so we can continue to grow and serve you with valuable content and new heart-based offerings in the future. Plus, I would love to highlight your review on a podcast episode so you get a shout out for listening. And sign up to join in this conversation with me at onbeinghumanpodcast.com. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Tune in weekly at onbeinghumanpodcast.com for more soul-exposing explorations of what it means to be human. Until next week, love to you all.